Hello and welcome back to World 360. What shadows loomed over Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Europe this week? What does Israel's seizure of a key border crossing in Gaza mean for the peace process? And what's behind the stir in relations between neighbouring countries, Myanmar and Thailand? We answer these and more in today's episode. So first up, Xi Jinping's visit to Europe. The Chinese president was visiting France, Serbia and Hungary from 5th to 10th May. It was his first state visit to Europe in 5 years. Keep in mind that the last two countries Xi visited, Serbia and Hungary, are at odds with the EU, and unlike most other European players, have not sanctioned Russia. Shadows loomed over Xi's visit to Europe this week, primarily over concerns about China's support to Russia amid the Ukraine war, and also this comes amid a slew of arrests in Europe against individuals believed to have been spying for China ahead of the EU Parliament elections. We're going to get into these two concerns, but before we do, let's take a look at what Xi Jinping spoke about with these various European leaders during his tour. Paris was Xi's first stop, and if you recall, French President Emmanuel Macron visited China last year, during which he had given a controversial interview to Politico in which he said Europe shouldn't become America's followers. On Monday, Macron and Xi held talks. The two sides agreed to jointly prevent a new Cold War and that they should pursue win-win cooperation and jointly oppose decoupling and cutting off supply chains, according to a readout from the Chinese side. A source close to the French presidency told Reuters that these were friendly and very frank talks that allowed Macron to pass on messages about Ukraine. Xi was received in France with much pomp and frills. In fact, in a personal gesture, Macron and his wife hosted Xi in the Pyrenees Mountains, followed by a dinner where they ate locally grown ham, lamb cheese, and blueberry pie. However, there were no big-ticket trade or defense deals, apart from a few French and Chinese companies signing off on agreements in the energy, finance, and transport sectors. Meanwhile, in Serbia, Xi Jinping visited the country to mark the 25th anniversary of the NATO bombing of China's embassy, which had killed Chinese nationals. Serbia is seen as China's most important partner in the Balkans. Xi Jinping also met Serbia's president, Alexander Vučić, and though Serbia has criticized Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it hasn't joined Western sanctions against Moscow. In the last leg of his tour, Xi Jinping arrived in Hungary, a country led by one of Putin's closest allies in Europe, apart from Belarus's Lukashenko. Here, I'm talking about Viktor Orban. The Hungarian president has carefully avoided criticizing Putin for his invasion into Ukraine. Not to mention, Hungary is heavily reliant on Russia for gas. Given the growing rift between the EU and Hungary has started opening up to the east, and that's where China comes in. Worried that it may lose EU funding, Hungary is looking to China for investments and to diversify its trade further. In fact, when Xi Jinping arrived in Hungary, he said relations between his country and the European country were the best they've ever been in history. Now, before we wrap up this segment, we need to look at why Xi Jinping's European tour has been shadowed. Firstly, the no-limits partnership between Russia and China has certainly irked Europe, which has had a front-row seat to the Ukraine war and even suffered immediate effects of it. China has been accused of selling arms to Russia amid the Ukraine war, and in April, G7 foreign ministers criticized Chinese firms' support for Russian defense industry for its military offensive in Ukraine. But there was another black cloud over Xi's visit, and that is the rise in espionage arrests in Europe ahead of the EU Parliament elections. In recent weeks, we've seen 3 countries, Belgium, Germany and the UK, making arrests against individuals believed to be spying for the Chinese government. Germany has arrested 4 people so far, and one of them was a political aide to Maximilian Krah, the lead candidate for the far-right Alternative for Germany party, which is contesting in the upcoming EU elections. In late April, the UK also announced action against people suspected of working as Chinese spies. Christopher Berry and Christopher Cash were charged with providing prejudicial information to China, and criminal proceedings have been initiated against these 2 men. For our second topic, we're looking at Israel's bombing and seizure of the Rafah border crossing, the last land route out of Gaza. This is a controversial and landmark move by Israel in the Gaza Strip, because it was through this crossing that most of the humanitarian aid was coming into Gaza. But according to Israel, this was also the last stronghold of Hamas. There's also a geostrategic angle to this, apart from just a military one. If Israel retains seizure of the Rafah crossing after its military operation in Gaza, it would have gained control over all the official entry and exit points of the Gaza Strip. So if this becomes a permanent seizure of Rafah, this would be a landmark move since 2005, when under former Israel PM Ariel Sharon, Israel disengaged from Gaza. Israel has reportedly dismantled 18 out of Hamas's 24 battalions and says 4 battalions are left in Rafah. Videos have emerged of Israel ground forces bombing parts of Gaza. Given that this is a key remaining land route for Gazans who are receiving aid, Israel's seizure of Rafah may deter peace talks that have been underway. Egypt and Qatar have been mediating these talks, and now Hamas has accused Israel of undermining ceasefire efforts by taking over Rafah. Reports are also coming in that the US has paused shipment of bombs to Israel over concerns about what has happened in Rafah. And this has irked some far-right leaders in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. In fact, Ben Gvir, Israel's national security minister, tweeted recently, or rather put out a statement on X where he said, "Hamas heart Biden." Now, keep in mind that all of this comes amid tensions between Israel and its closest ally, the US. The US, though it approved a massive additional funding bill for Israel's war in Gaza, has reportedly been mulling over sanctions against a particular unit of the Israel Defense Forces for alleged human rights abuses in the West Bank. And we went into detail about this military unit in an episode just a couple of weeks ago, if you'd like to check that out. For our last topic, we're looking at what happens to be a stir in relations between Myanmar and Thailand, two neighboring countries that have had strong and strategic bilateral relations for years. The Thai leadership has also enjoyed close ties with the Myanmar junta, which launched a coup in the country in February 2021. And this March, for the first time, an official from the junta-led government attended an ASEAN meeting for the first time since the military regime was excluded from top summits at ASEAN. Some reports call this attempts by Myanmar's allies like Thailand to make the junta look presentable. Recently, however, former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra has met with Myanmar's opposition groups, which seems to have caused a slight stir. At the moment, the Myanmar junta has faced significant challenges, especially in the south, from ethnic resistance groups. It is believed that Myanmar's shadow civilian government and these ethnic resistance groups are strategically putting pressure on the junta. We in India, also a neighbor to Myanmar, have been keeping a close eye on the situation, and we even moved some Indian staff from our Sitwe consulate to Yangon. But back to Thailand and Myanmar. This week, the Thai PM Shreta Thavisin said he was not aware of former Prime Minister Thaksin's recent meetings with representatives of Myanmar's opposition. And these opposition groups included the Kachin National Organization and the National Unity Government. The Thai foreign minister, meanwhile, was a little more direct. He said the Thai government is not involved with Thaksin's talks in Myanmar, but he also admitted that the former PM could be helpful in mediation talks between the junta and resistance groups. We have to admit that Thaksin is well known and has connections. Myanmar believes that he can help, Thailand's foreign minister said. But in yet another twist to the story, the Thailand Parliament's Committee on National Security and Border Affairs warned that the former Prime Minister's meeting could cause confusion. There have been debates among Thai MPs about how this makes the government look. This is because Thaksin holds no parliamentary position in Thailand, and even if he is successful in negotiating some kind of peace deal, it's unclear if the terms would be regarded as an obligation to the Thai government. Other MPs in Thailand are also demanding the government flatly deny Thaksin such a role, as he doesn't legally have the power to negotiate on the government's behalf. Thank you so much for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint.